There's Josh. Good morning, Josh. I was just telling the class that we're going to have asynchronous class tomorrow for a number of reasons, but I think I can combine what I was going to talk about tomorrow today, and then that way you guys don't have to show up live. So today we're going to go over Act 3 of The Importance of Being Earnest, which is the final act of the play. I also want to talk briefly about essay number 2 and the final exam, which are coming up. So if I do that, then tomorrow, all I need to do is have you do a formative. I'm making a special question for tomorrow, just checking in where you are with your paper. The paper's due in a week and a half. And it's a longer research type paper. So I want to talk about it a little bit today and then also check in with you tomorrow, but we don't need to have class tomorrow. So I'll officially cancel it on Google Classroom with a message just so that you remember. But I like to tell you the day before. I don't want you to have to wake up and then find out class was canceled. Obviously we didn't have the internet when I was in undergrad, but you would get all the way to campus and there'd be a note on the door that said, Professor whoever's not meeting with class today. And you'd be like, man, I could have slept another hour. So I'm just telling you tomorrow is going to be asynchronous. Tomorrow, discussion number 8 is due. The paper's coming up, so I don't feel like you can use your time more wisely. So let me, oh, you know what else I wanted to mention before we get started is the evaluations. The evaluations close on the 6th, I think it is, of May. You need to go in and do your course evaluation at some point in time. So sometime before the 6th, I don't think anybody from this class has done it. I don't have a list of who does them. It's all anonymous, but I know how many students in each class have completed the evaluation. And I think it's important to do those. My department chairs over at STC are going to want to look at them to know whether I should keep teaching for them or not. So, you know, all your instructors will be there on your evaluation and you can do your evaluation of those. All right, so let me start with talking about essay number 2 in the final exam, and then we'll wrap up with Act 3 of the play. Act 3 is not as long as Act 2. Act 2 is the longest part, so it won't take us too long to watch the ending of the play. But let's touch on essay number 2. I went over this a couple of weeks ago when I made the document available to you, but you know, everything depends on your time frames and your other courses and so on. I'm not oblivious to that. So I just wanted to touch on the paper again. And then tomorrow you should have some basic ideas of what you're going to write about to share with me tomorrow. So I'm not going to force you to, you know, like give me a draft tomorrow or anything, but I want to know which, you know, like which of the 3 options are you thinking about doing? Basically, what direction are you going? Maybe you have a thesis statement that you can share. And if you don't have any of those things, maybe tomorrow's a good day to spend a little time and think about that. So at least you've got it started. Sometimes starting is the hardest part. So just remember that the paper is 6 to 8 pages, not including the works cited. You need to have at least 5 sources and 3 of them need to be from JSTOR specifically. So if you're not familiar with JSTOR, I feel like you probably are, but if you're not, there are some links here that can help you get started with JSTOR. It's just a database where you can find articles. If you're working on researching for your topic and you're having trouble finding articles from journals and things like that, then send me an email and I will find some and help you. I'll send you the DOI or the link or whatever, and that way you can get started with that. If I know that some people procrastinate or some people have other things that are due and you have to allocate your time, so I understand that. The only thing is if you wait until the day before, I can't help you a whole lot. It doesn't leave enough time for me to, you know, like if you sit down to really do the paper Monday before it's due on a Tuesday, right here, the 4th. If you sit down to do it right beforehand, I mean, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to judge that, but I will tell you that that will make it difficult for you if you need help. What if you get on JSTOR and you can't find articles and you need 3 of them? I can't, if you're working at midnight or that day, I might not be able to get back to you. So I just wanted to do this little check-in tomorrow to see where you are. Remember that there are 3 options for this paper. You can analyze, find research on a literary movement or period. So maybe the medieval period was interesting to you when we were studying that, or the Renaissance or 17th century, and you want to look into more of the scholarship about that movement, then you would choose option 1. And the thrust there is, how did that movement or that time period influence English literature as we know it? What have we brought from that period? How has it helped to build our modern, or what we would call now contemporary literature? So there'll be some scholars who've done work in that area, and you can go and find those articles on JSTOR. And the other 2 you can use, because you have to have 5 total sources, you can find online, but they should still be, reliable sources. Option 2 is to go back to a piece, to one of the authors that we studied. In this course, we only get to read like a little bit of different time periods and a little bit of certain selected authors, not even all the authors from the time period. But if one author was interesting to you, if the Jonathan Swift stuff was interesting to you, maybe you want to focus your research paper on studying what scholars have had to say about his work in general. You don't have to read all of what Jonathan Swift wrote. You're just looking up, what do scholars have to say about his body of work and how it influenced English literature, So that is option 2. Option 3 is to focus on one text. So it's looking back at that text and trying to affix at least 2 different critical lenses to it. So you'll need to view the piece of literature as, through the lens of psychoanalysis, feminism, Marxism, or formalism. Some of those we studied first semester, so your notes from first semester could help you. But the remainder of this document is all about explaining those lenses or reviewing them for you. So you wouldn't use the rest of this document unless you were choosing option 3. If you're writing on option 1 or 2, then the rest of the document is, you could go without it. But in case you need a little bit of background or info, you can use this as one of your sources. It doesn't count as a JSTOR source, but you can use this source. It says right on the document that the sources are listed here, they put in here. I did not do those. That's from STC, the department. So those are your 3 options. So I would be thinking right now, and for your formative tomorrow, I'd be thinking, do I want to focus on a time period, an author, or a specific piece that we studied? And which one would that be? And that's pretty much what I'm going to be asking you tomorrow. If you have a thesis statement that you want to share with me, or if you want additional feedback, or if your response tomorrow makes me want to communicate with you, I'll send you an email or something like that to help you out. But that's the goal for the paper. Originally, they only had this one. This was the only option. I wanted to open it up a little bit, so I like to give choice. I feel like people do better with a paper if they have more options. So any one of those 3 questions in general, or something that I can talk about with the paper? Oh. Okay, that's due a week from this coming Tuesday. We're coming down to the end here. If you note, next week we're finishing up with the Victorians this week with the end of Earnest, and then we'll be working on 20th century and modernism next week. and the week after that, and then that will just go right into the exam. Let me talk a little bit about the final exam. I think that I will have a study guide ready for you on Tuesday's class. So 2 weeks before the final exam window, I'll give you a review sheet just like the one that we did for the midterm. The final is set up exactly like the midterm. It's got the same structure. So on the review, I will just list for you all of the possible topics that it's random when you take that test. So I'll list for you all the things that you should and concepts that you should have made notes on during the second half of the course. And that gives you 2 weeks to look that over in preparation for the final exam. I'm not sure, but I got the feeling on the midterm that some people sort of didn't, maybe they looked over the study guide, but they didn't go back and really like study the study guide. I was looking at some of the times, and some people were taking 10 and 12 hours to do the exam. Of course, it's open-ended, so that's your prerogative. But I just wonder what would take you that long to do it. And I started thinking maybe people are just waiting until the exam to learn the material. The idea with the exam is that you already know most of the stuff. And so whatever comes up, you can just type your answer. Not that you have to go and research the answer in your notes or elsewhere in order to answer the question. That's the stuff that's supposed to be happening all this time that we're doing lectures and you're reading the material and so on. So this might sound harsh, but if you're waiting until the final exam to find out about the things that are on the final exam, you're doing it wrong. And if you're cursing me about being on a 10-hour exam, I don't know why that's happening, except you're not keeping up with your reading and, you know, coming to lectures and making notes and all that stuff. I mean, if you have to look at a couple of your notes during the exam, I think that's normal, but most of it should be here. Like that's the point of taking an exam. That's the way education works. The exam is just proving that you know these things. It's not the time to learn them. So, you know, if you're, I'm going to probably take off a few questions. I know that it was a little bit long, but you know, I think I said that fair enough. So then the window is here. And then we won't have class that week. That's sort of, they call it dead week, final exams. And then this, your grade, my grades post on the 17th. So I think they post for you later that week or the 24th. So the study guide will come up. I'll work on it this weekend. I think it'd be ready on Tuesday. I might even post it on Blackboard before Tuesday if it's ready. And so when we go into the last unit, the final exam review should be there. Or study guide. I don't like to say review because you review to me is an action, not a thing. So a study guide is a thing that I can provide. The review is the action that you do when you're looking at the study guide. So any questions on the final? It's going to go back through Gulliver. Okay, no questions. All right, then let me switch over to the screen that I have for the importance of being earnest. It's the same screen that I had on Tuesday for Act 2. Just to review that the characters are listed there. We watched in Act 2 a lot of confusion on the part of Gwendolyn and Cecily, who think that they're engaged to Ernest Worthing, who does not exist. Jack or John Worthing exists and Algernon Moncrief exists, but Jack has created this alter ego of Ernest, and he goes by Earnest when he's in London, when he's in town. And that causes some problems because it's a made up persona. Algernon pretends to be Ernest when he gets to the country. So everything kind of came to a climax in Act 2 when Gwendolyn and Cecily realized that the men that they were in love with, neither one of them were really named Ernest, which they really want to marry somebody named Ernest because Earnest means honest and forthright and eager. And that to them is the type of person that they want to marry. Obviously, throughout the entire play, Oscar Wilde is making fun of the way that Victorians in the upper class view marriage and social status and Victorian morality and gender roles and all those things. So when we see the characters in this play, we have to think of them as exaggerated because he's exaggerating them in order to point out their foolishness. I mean, who decides who they're going to marry based on the name of the person? And that's it. They do say some funny things. Sometimes probably they were mentioning in my third period that they could hear me laughing in the background because if you're paying attention, there are some really subtle digs that Oscar Wilde is making at people like Cecily. She says something in Act 2 when Gwendolyn arrives. Gwendolyn says, "Let me look at you," right? Like when she figures out who she is, that she's Jack's ward. She gets out her glasses, "Let me look at you," and Cecily says, "I'm very fond of being looked at." And all that stuff is Oscar Wilde poking fun at what these aristocrats do with their time and the hypocrisy of earning their wealth off of the backs of the working class and then just completely ignoring the plight of the working class. So continue to look for these concepts: deception, identity. Identity is a big one in Act 3 because there are some surprises. I don't know if you read Act 3 in preparation for today or not, but there are some surprises. Jack doesn't really have lineage. He was found in a handbag at the train station. And so he's an orphan in a way, and he doesn't really know his origins, and that's going to all play out in Act 3. Also, I think you can see city versus country. I pointed it out in the clothing of Gwendolyn and Cecily last time, but you can definitely see that Acts 2 and 3 are happening in the country. Act 1 is happening in the city. So there's a little bit of a shift in that element as well. So I'm going to go ahead and play Act 3 for you. It starts when Cecily, this is Cecily, and here is Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is the love interest of Jack/Ernest, and Cecily is in love with Ernest, who she just met 20 minutes ago, but she knows about him. He's not even a real person. It's really Algernon. So the scene starts with them, and they have to sort out how they're going to handle the fact that they have these alternative identities and whether or not they're going to actually get married. Lady Bracknell also comes back in this act. She was in Act 1. Lady Bracknell is Gwendolyn's mother, and she does not necessarily approve of Ernest/Jack. So she comes back, and she and Miss Prism help to clear up the confusion of identity in this act. So let me take out my AirPod thingy, and I will play that for you. And then when we're done, I'll just, we'll come back together briefly, and then I'll dismiss.
They are approaching. That is very formal. Let us preserve a dignified silence, certainly. It is the only thing to do now.